opponents mustn't register on an emotional level. First, distract target. Then block his blind jab. Counter with cross to left cheek. Discombobulate.
Hi everyone and welcome to Priority Holder, and today I'll be playing Blue-White Thoracle-Rally Self-Mill Combo, that's a mouthful, in the Explorer format. Now the name of the game is to try and win with Thassa's Oracle. So this creature lets us look at the top X cards of our library, or X is Devotion to Blue, and put one on top. But the catch is that if X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in our library, we just straight up win the game. So we're trying to win the game off that trigger. And the way we do that is by pairing Thassa's Oracle with a bunch of blue self-mill creatures that can either shrink our library or provide Devotion to Blue to help with the lethal Thassa's Oracle trigger. The other important piece of that puzzle is Rally the Ancestors. So this is a white X spell that lets us return each creature with mana value X or less from our graveyard to the battlefield, but it's temporary. But all we need is temporary because we can get all those enter the battlefield mill triggers and a big Devotion to Blue count to win with Thassa's Oracle. And an important piece of like the self-mill puzzle is Sage's Row Denizen, because it adds an extra mill 2 onto every blue creature we have, so it just sort of amplifies our mill. So more often than not, we're trying to rally for 3, and Sage's Row Denizen can also mill the opponent should we need that avenue to try and win the game. The other really important creatures in the deck are Fallaji Archaeologist. This mills only 3, but lets us put a non-creature, non-land card from among the milled cards into our hand. So this is another way to find rally while being on plan. A similar one is Picklock Prankster's Adventure, which could put an instant or sorcery among the milled cards into our hand. And so these are ways that we can help us find a rally much more efficiently. We also have Mystic Sanctuary, which if we have enough islands, can put a rally on top of our deck to try and let us combo off the next turn. That sort of warps the mana base a little bit, but it gives us some extra redundancy to find Rally the Ancestors and go for the win. But yeah, let's jump into some games and see if we can combo off. Alright, this looks like a nice hand. The Glasspool Mimics are there for this exact purpose, to function as lands or as spells, because we really do have to hit 5 mana to really go off with this deck. Alright, we're going to go ahead and lead with Picklock Prankster's Adventure, and fortunately we already find a rally, so off to a great start. Mosswood Dread Knight from the opponent. Now we're going to play Sage's Row Denizen. It's more of like a long game outlook, but it should be good. And then we see Agatha's Soul Cauldron on the other side. That's pretty rough because that's going to be graveyard hate for them, and because we're so creature dense, this could be flinging 1/1 counters all over the place for them. So if their creature hadn't grown, I might have traded right there, but definitely not going to chump at that point. So we're going to shock that landing because we actually have two mana milling cards. This is the argument for not chumping with Sage's Row Denizen, just the extra 2 cards it adds onto every blue creature when they mill is important. I'm gonna go ahead and just play the Picklock Prankster just to clog up the board a bit. And seeing that second copy of Rally get milled there is unfortunate, because if we played the adventure side of our other Picklock, we could have picked up a second one to be sort of more Thoughtseize redundant, Thoughtseize proof. Soul Cauldron, place another counter, and we're just going to, that's one thing this deck does really well, is throw a lot of blockers in front of stuff. So yeah, we're just gonna not allow any trample through, and a lot of times we actually want our creatures to die so they can re-enter again. And the opponent is going sort of aggro with the Soul Cauldron, playing a second copy, and then they have another Dread Knight out, so they're actually going to be able to apply quite a bit of pressure. Now there is a question as to what to copy here. Decide just to copy the wall because it's high toughness against the tramplers, and because that's going to mill us for 6 right here between Sage's Row Denizen and the Wall of Lost Thoughts, which means we are very close to just firing off Rally the Ancestors, but the opponent is able to just keep purging our graveyard with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is not great for us. And then, speaking of graveyard hate, here comes Restless Cottage, which has an attack trigger that exiles something from our graveyard as well. So our graveyard is under assault right here. So we have a lot of damage coming at us already. We're running out of creatures to chump with. Now I like the opponent's decision. Like they could tell we're building up something, like trying to fill our graveyard. Like they know shenanigans are happening. So I like this decision from them just to go aggro with the attacks. Decide to block in this manner. Could have possibly thrown the Sage's Row Denizen in front of something, but if I've been checking the graveyard up to this point, and we actually do not have a Thassa's Oracle, so that the one you just saw right there get milled is actually the first one in there. Now the problem is the opponent has wisely still left up Soul Cauldron, you know, because they know something's going on, and now they probably can tell what's happening. So they see that there's a Thassa's Oracle. If we try and fire off Rally right here, they're just going to exile it with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So what I'm going to do is play the third island, which is key because of Mystic Sanctuary. Now Mystic Sanctuary is going to be active should we need it. And I'm going to save Rally Ancestors for instant speed. And I was hoping they would try and go for, you know, an exile and step, but the opponent knows what they're doing there. They're going to fire up Restless Cottage and use the Cottage trigger to exile Thassa's Oracle. Not to mention threatening, like, lethal right here. Alright, so our hand is sort of forced right here. We're going to fire off Rally for the full X equals 3. Now, opponent can just, in response, nab Thassa's Oracle with the Soul Cauldron, which we know, but what we're hoping right here is that, you know, we're going to be able to have a ton of blockers come into play with this Rally, and we're going to hope that we can mill a new Thassa's Oracle and try again later. These creatures will be exiled if they're not entirely dead though. So now we did happen to get a ton of Sage's Row Denizens into play, Glasspool Mimic being one of them. And so, and once again, we don't have a Rally the Ancestors in hand, so we can't mill ourselves completely because we need some time to Mystic Sanctuary one on top and keep going. So I'm scanning the graveyard, so we have 26 cards in the graveyard, and I'm only hitting ourselves with enough Sage's Row Denizens so that we have like 6 cards left, and throwing all the rest of them at them. But we actually had so many that I'm like, as I start clicking, I'm like, man, like we might be able just to mill them out right here. And so that's an important like contingency plan to remember in this deck, that if you get enough Sage's Row Denizens, you can actually pretty easily mill the opponent. And we happened to spike a Rally off the one Fallaji that we had, so now all the Sage's Row Denizen triggers are going off, and this is one risk for this deck. You can see our timer's burning down with all of our triggers, so you have to be pretty decisive in certain moments. And you can see we made it all the way down to 0 timeouts. And so at this point, I'm just sort of frantically throwing a squad of blockers in front of each one because we just don't have time to really think through it. And they're really expendable at this point anyway. We just want to make sure no tramples getting through, no surprises can get us. Our opponent's going to fire off Royal Treatment. Not going to be good enough to like actually get any damage through because we just threw so much stuff under the bus. Now a trick you can do in this deck is fire off a Rally in response to the other one to get a higher devotion count. However, we're actually fighting against the clock more than anything, and I realized that we might just lose with all those Sage's Row Denizens in play, so I decide it's actually better for us to let all those get exiled and then fire off Rally in this instance, because once again it was because of the clock, and I didn't even pay X equals 3 because I didn't want all the Sage's Row Denizens to gobble up the little bit of clock we have. But we were able to mill out, get a fresh Oracle, and a win. Now, as we move on into the next game, please remember to Devoted Grafkeeper the like button, comment and subscribe. It supports the channel and helps you know what the people want. Thank you very much. And here's our next hand. A little bit land heavy, but we're hoping that with the Fallaji Archaeologist, we can grab a rally and get going. A second one is really nice. Blue-white land from the opponent. I don't think they're doing what we're doing. And we happen to hit a rally off the first one, which is just excellent. Now we're feeling great. Alright, so blue-white land and pass. Could theoretically be spirits, but my experience more often than not, it's control. We're going to mill ourselves with Wall of Lost Thoughts. It's hard to say whether Archaeologist was the play there or Wall. It's Wall mills a little bit more, and I already have a rally, 2 copies of rally now. So the opponent knows about one of them, and they're just gonna they know something's afoot with all, like, you know, seeing Thassa's Oracle. You know it's not a normal deck when you see that one being played. All right, another Archaeologist. And another thing to be careful about is to make sure you always set up 2 white sources. So because we have so many blue cards, I almost played it as blue there as default, but it was like, wait a second, we need the second white for rally. So Grafkeeper mills us a bit more. And the nice thing now, so the opponent is sort of, we're forcing them to just keep it mana at all times, but now we actually have some power on the board to pressure their life total, like force like a Wandering Emperor or something like that. And we already have our rallies locked and loaded with at least one Sage's Road Denizen thus far, which means we might already be able to get there with the amount of devotion we can muster. So, and because rally is an instant, we can sort of just hold them hostage the whole game until they go shields down. So opponent thinks it through, and they put a Teferi in a stack, and it seems like as good a time as any. I'm not 100% certain it's going to be lethal. You see me set an upkeep stop just in case we need to fire off the other one on upkeep for that maximum devotion before the first one expires. So we're going to fire off an X=3 rally and see if it's enough. And we're not going to, because Teferi will let them untap some land, so this is our window to do it right here. So copying Wall of Thought, Lost Thought, and placing on the triggers on the stack right here. And we happen to hit a lot of Wall of Lost Thoughts, and those mill quite efficiently. And we have a 13 devotion Thassa's Oracle, so yeah, we only end up with a few cards left, and that's another win. So that was like a really quick, like, turn 5 kill right there against control. That is like what this deck is capable of. It doesn't always go that way, but you can see this deck does have that possible upside. So we're gonna slam Larder Zombie. This is a card I'm not like super convinced belongs in here. Legion Lieutenant from the other side. Also, the opponent did mulligan quite a bit, so Fallaji Archaeologist, and we happen to hit a rally, so that's great. That allows us to start setting up. Double Mystic Sanctuaries in hand is a little bit awkward as far as like playing a lot of spells out. Drana, Liberator of Malakir. It's going to be a big problem because when she deals damage to a player, she puts a 1/1 counter on each other attacking creature. But because she has First Strike, she delivers damage and then dumps it on everyone else. So she's basically like an improved Vampire Lord for their strategy. Decide that we're going to need a flying chump blocker at some point, so we're going to fire off the Picklock Prankster because it's going to get nasty real fast. Bloodthirsty Aerialist. Not good. The flyers is where we have a vulnerability. Like, we can, if we have Grafkeepers in the graveyard or Picklock Pranksters, like we can chump some flying damage. So here's Drana doing her thing, which means our creature bites the dust. Thassa's Oracle is not super useful. So this is actually a pretty critical turn. I think I make a mistake here. We don't have like a really robust graveyard yet. Like, that's why I'm like going for the mill plan. But I think honestly what I should have done is just played Picklock Prankster and played a tapped Mystic Sanctuary. So the extra rally is nice, but we already had 2 of them. The reason is once we can start firing off rallies, like, we'll have so many blockers and we could soak up so much damage. It's just going to be sort of inevitability when we can win, especially when we have this many copies of rally. And right here, I'm basically ensuring or gambling on not having 5 mana for the X=3 rally. So the opponent did have Fatal Push. Like, let's say we played Picklock Prankster, they might have been able to just Fatal Push it, but I still think that was the correct play, and it would at least put one in our graveyard. The milling got us one anyway, but now we're taking a ton of damage, and the opponent is drawing another Lord, and we are just in huge trouble here. So Drawn is going to smack us again, power up everything else, and this is where you could see that play costing us, because we would love to fire off a rally here and at least start setting up, but we're only at 7 life, and we have a tapped land at this point. So at best we can only X=2 rally with 36 cards left in our deck. Like, it is possible to win off X=2 rallies, but it's just way more difficult. Like, we have to have a really stocked graveyard. And the opponent just rips another Vampire Lord, which is going to give them the game here. I'm still thinking that we could chump the Drana and survive at 1 life, except one of our lands is an Adarkar Wastes, so we are actually exactly dead right here. So if we were able to survive this turn, this would have been a pretty easy win, but opponent has exact lethal, and we fall to vampires. On to the next one. Okay. Some Larder Zombies. Once again, I'm not certain we should be playing those. Black source from the opponent. Larder Zombie, go. Opponent's like, what the heck is that? Red land from the opponent. Bloodtide Harvester. Could be red-black mid-range, could be this sacrifice. I guess the sacrifice decks play Harvester sometimes. Play another Larder Zombie. Now, I didn't really discuss that much, but I think this was an absolutely horrible keep that I made right here. I think this is the limited player me seeing colored, lands and castable spells, and so I kept it, but too much needs to go right for that hand. We need a rally, and we need 2 white sources, and I think that's just an easy mulligan right there. Like, that's asking too much. So, I mean, we're gonna soldier on anyway, and we have a 1/4 blocker, which is sort of nice at this point, but still no rally, and even if we do get a rally, we still need 2 white sources, so Graveyard Trespasser. It's crazy how much incidental graveyard hate is on, like, everything these days. So opponent's going to start policing our graveyard, which is not great for us. Going for longer term upside right here with Sage's or Denizen. And mana efficiency. So, and it's Shielded the Apocalypse, that's pretty tough. No good attacks from the opponent right there, so we at least bought a little bit of time, but Shielded's going to just start passively taking us down right here. And you could see things are just sort of spiraling. Right? We don't have the right colors of mana. We don't have enough mana, period. And we don't have rally. So, it's not looking great. Opponent gains some life, which we don't care about. Opponent attacks in. You're going to have to nab something else. Though perhaps this was too much concern for Graveyard Trespasser right here. I really wanted to kill it, but in doing so, let us take a ton of damage. Maybe we really need to throw stuff in front of all the creatures. But Shielded, I think I underestimated how fast Shielded's going to kill us from this spot. And not only that, but they're able to just pile on some more threats. So we are in huge trouble. Once again, missing a land right here and missing a rally. So this game is unfortunate because I think we do have a decent matchup against this kind of deck. Yeah, and they Fatal Push down, and I realize between their attacks and the Shielded trigger, we are dead this game. So that was unfortunate. That one was on me because I kept a bad hand. This kind of hand is a much better keep situation. So Arboreal Grazer from the opponent, interesting, in a Yorion deck. Alright, so there's some sort of Abzan deck. Jade Light Ranger. And so I know there is a new Explorer combo deck with Lost Caverns of Ixalan coming out. And so I'm sort of on my toes thinking it's that. With Jade Light Ranger, I haven't played it yet. I've like heard about it. So we're going to play Wall of Lost Thoughts because it can just chump Jade Light Ranger currently. Not chump, it can just wall it off at the moment. Prosperous Innkeeper. Stitcher Supplier. So we're not the only self-mill deck. And they put a Siege Rhino in the bin. So trying to figure out what's going on the opponent's side right there. The mana situation can be a little bit wonky in this deck, but we're going to go for like the longer term upside with Sage's Road Denizen right here, and just mana efficiency. Siege Rhino is going to ding us right here. Opponent's going to gain some life. But once again, they just didn't have any good attacks, so I'm going to play Devoted Grafkeeper, and we're going to get to mill a total of 4 cards. Alright, so we're charging up that graveyard. Now, once again, we're running that situation. It's like, alright, do we want to, like, play the tap land here? Now, notice, so we have 2 islands in play. A third island would unlock Mystic Sanctuary to put a rally on top of our deck, because we don't have one right now. Like, we're going to fire off Picklock Prankster, and then we see the opponent is also a rally deck, so that makes me a little concerned. They mill one right there. Trying to decide if it's like the aforementioned combo deck I was thinking about or something else. But yeah, we're just going to chump the Siege Rhino here. We want to rebuy a wall anyway. It perfectly blocks all the Siege Rhino damage. So our opponent puts Yorion in hand. So if they get enough Rhinos coming into play, like, we could be in huge trouble. So we're going to fire off Picklock Prankster. Unfortunately, do not hit a rally. Do not draw a rally. So we're going to play Devoted Grafkeeper here. And going to mill a total of 4 cards between its own trigger and Denizen's trigger. And there's a rally. Now it's a question of what to do. So we need to hurry up and do something. So I'm going to go ahead and play Thassa's Oracle here. We have such a high devotion count. We're going to be able to fish pretty deep in our deck. Fish pretty deeply in our deck for something. And so we don't have a rally, but we have another Mystic Sanctuary, and so I decide that's going to be good to put on top because we could play our current one, and that gives us the requisite third island. And so we are 2 turns away from it. Like, we won't be able to grab rally until after the next turn. But decide we're just going to, like, trade off the Rhino right here and try not to take as much damage. Like, it is risky knowing that they are a rally deck, and like putting extra Siege Rhinos in their graveyard could come back to bite us, so it is somewhat risky. Now I decide to play Picklock Prankster here. Now we know we want to play Mystic Sanctuary to put a rally back on top, but we got to take care of all of our self-milling before we play the Mystic Sanctuary. So that's why I'm playing out all my blue creatures first, because this is where you have to be really careful with your sequencing. So now we're going to play Mystic Sanctuary, put a rally on top, and hope that we can survive until our next turn and get them with our own rally. So we pass the opponent. And so far it seems like they're just sort of like a value deck. Right, Elvish Mystic. I don't know if they have any sort of similar creatures to Siege Rhino. The opponent fires off an X=2 rally. Here's me looking at the graveyard like, but they actually don't have anything. I think they're just showing us that they had a rally, or maybe it was legitimately a mistake that they fired one off that was too small, but maybe they just knew that they were done for. So we're going to fire off an X=3 rally right here. I'm scanning how many cards are on the deck because we could hold control. That way when everything comes in, we can Larder Zombie some cards away. So it is important to do that sometimes, but you can see we're gonna have a billion mill triggers, like, and an X=22 Thassa's Oracle, so we are already basically there with how many cards we have. So I'm setting up all the triggers here and opponent packs it in. And what a wild, crazy, and fun deck this is. This just, I don't know, it's just really satisfying, strange gameplay that we have here. What I really like about it is that it's very one-dimensional, but it's very good at executing its plan. We have so many ways of finding rally, like Fallaji Archaeologist and and Picklock Prankster are just so awesome, like being exactly on plan and helping us dig for rally. Also shout out Mystic Sanctuary for being clutch at times. Just really, really awesome. What I like is that we don't always even need like a lethal rally right off the bat. We can fire one off, soak up a bunch of damage, set up some devotion, and if we have a second copy, we could fire it off on upkeep or just dig for one later, because firing off one will like definitely get us most of the way there for the next one, and usually we don't need more than 2 to go off. There's some choices in here I'm not quite sure of. The mana base is a little bit rough. Like we could put more Irrigated Farmlands in there, but the problem is like them coming to play tapped is like incredibly costly. Like I would kept shaving them down because like we need the critical like untapped land turn 5 and we draw like a tap land, and we already have the Mystic Sanctuaries coming to play tap sometimes, so it's just sort of costly, but it's definitely not like 100% refined. Like there's some more tinkering that could be done. I'm also not 100% convinced that Larder Zombie is what we want. Like it is possible to reanimate and then tap a bunch of stuff and get some extra surveils and boost our like self-mill a little bit. It could be better to just put Minister of Inquiries. This doesn't have like an enter battlefield mill trigger, and it can't like, it is not productive if we hit it off rally, but it's so much more efficient than Larder Zombie that it might be worth it anyway. So that's just something to keep on your radar for this deck. But yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? What do you think about Rally the Ancestor combos? I've seen a few different ones, but this one has just been super fun. Also, if you're interested in combo decks, I have another really cool one I did recently that I also enjoyed as well. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.